The Apple Watch Series 10 is amazing if you know how to set it up properly and how to best use all of its new features. So in this video, I'm going to show you the first 19 things that you need to do on your new Apple Watch Series 10. These are going to be tips, tricks, settings to change, and just things that you need to know about your Series 10 in order to get the most out of your new watch. Okay, so the very first thing you need to do is choose the perfect watch face for you. This is what you're gonna see pretty much all day on your wrist. So you wanna make it look good. And you also wanna test out the new watch faces, Flux and Reflections. So this is Flux. This actually comes by default on the Series 10. And that's because now we have a 1 Hz refresh rate for the first time ever on an Apple Watch. And what that means is that you can see the seconds hand moving even when your watch is in the always on mode. So it works for Flux and also for Reflections. This is the other new one, and you can see the seconds hand ticking even though we're in always on mode. No other Apple Watch can do that. But of course, you probably do not want to stick to the default watch faces, so you want to go ahead and tap and hold on the watch face and then go to edit, and from here you have different options. So you can change your dial, so you can go to full screen, or in this example a circular dial. You have all your different colors here, and then you have your complications, which for this specific watch face there are no complications. And then you could also go all the way down to the end here and add a new watch face. The next thing you need to do is learn how to use double tap to its full potential. So if you've never had an Apple Watch with double tap before, you are going to love this because it is very, very useful. So first off, just from the watch face itself, you can double tap, which a double tap is just putting your index finger and your thumb together twice. So a quick double tap right there, and you can see it will pull up my Smart Stack. And I can actually scroll. If I double tap again, I can scroll through my Smart Stack. So that's cool, but we can also double tap inside of applications. So I'm inside of the weather app here. If I double tap, you can see it will scroll through the application for me. I don't even have to touch my watch face with my hand. You could do this on a workout as well. So if your fingers are sweaty from working out and you don't want to have to touch your watch face, you could just double tap and scroll through your different metrics. You could do things like read and respond to messages without ever touching your watch face. So you can see if I go up on this message right here and I double tap, it will scroll down to the bottom of the message for me. And when I get down to the bottom, if I double tap right there, it will invoke dictation, and I'm starting to send a message. And when I'm done, I just double tap and it will send that message to the other person just like that. Or if you have a timer that goes off, you can dismiss the timer with a simple double tap gesture. So just double tap right here once the timer goes off, and boom, it's done. You don't have to actually touch your watch. Okay, so here's something pretty fun that's new on the Apple Watch Series 10. You can now play music or podcasts from your Apple Watch speakers. So you'll notice that we have completely revamped speakers on the side of the Apple Watch Series 10, and that's not only for playing music or podcasts, which we'll talk about that in a moment, but that is one additional feature that we get now. So if you go into the music application or into the podcast application, tap on the 3 dots up in the top right, and then go to AirPlay, and make sure that your Apple Watch is selected. If it's not, you can go to Control Other Speakers and TV, and you will see the Apple Watch up top. Just tap on that, and now the music or podcast will play from your Apple Watch speakers. And you might be wondering, why would I ever use that? Well, I think it's great if you want to finish, that song you were listening to or that podcast you were listening to when you get out of the car and you're going into the house, or when you're going into the grocery store, whatever the case may be. If you have to get out of the car in a hurry and you want to continue listening and finishing up what you were listening to, this can be a good way of doing that. And the other benefit with those speakers is that when you're on the phone with somebody, you can hear them more clearly now. I've noticed it's louder than my Series 9, which is great. And by the way, speaking of phone calls, there's also now voice isolation with your Apple Watch's microphone. So if you take phone calls on your Apple Watch Series 10, you now have voice isolation, so your voice will sound a lot better when you're talking on the phone to somebody, and it will drown out that background noise. Now, this is enabled by default, so that's just something that you need to know. And if you were ever in the past not really a fan of answering phone calls or transferring over your phone call to your Apple Watch, you might want to reconsider that now, because the Series 10 makes that experience better for the person on the other end. The next thing you want to do is add Apple Pay to your Apple Watch, because this is going to make checking out at the grocery store so much faster and more convenient than using your iPhone. So go into your watch application and go into your settings here, and then go down until you see Wallet and Apple Pay. tap on that. And then in here, you want to go to add card, and you'll get multiple options here, including apps from your iPhone, but you probably want to go to available cards that are already on your iPhone and go to previous cards. And then from here, you want to select the cards that you want to add to your Apple Watch to use with Apple Pay. So I'm going to select my Apple Card and my Amex card right here, and I'll go to continue, and our card has been added. So now when you go to your Apple Watch, the way to pay with Apple Pay is to just double press on the side button right here, right below the digital crown. Just double press on that, and that will go ahead and launch your Apple Pay. You just tap on the kiosk or the register, whatever you're at, and it will pay using your card. Now, the next thing you need to do is make it so that your Apple Watch can unlock your Mac. So go onto your Mac and go into the settings application, and then go down to Touch ID and password. And in this section at the bottom, you'll see a section for Apple Watch. You want to make sure to turn on this setting for your Apple Watch. That way you can unlock your Mac very easily and quickly every time you either open up your MacBook or when you wake your desktop Mac up from sleep. It's very convenient. So here's something else you might want to change. So you know how when you're playing media like a video or music, it shows this by default on your watch face? Well, that can be pretty annoying. It's better than the full page now playing view, but sometimes you just want to see your watch face. So you can swipe down to get to that, but a lot of times it'll just default to this, and you could actually change that live activity from showing up there by default. So to do that, go into your watch's settings, and you want to go down to Smart Stack, and from here go into live activities, and you can disable live activities as a whole right there if you would like to, but they are pretty useful. But you want to go down until you see media apps. Go into media apps, and from here go to auto launch, and you can turn that off. So by default, it auto launches media to go into the Smart Stack, but if you don't want it to show up at all in your Smart Stack, you can turn that off. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is configure your haptics and also enable silent mode. So go into your watch app on your iPhone and go to the settings, go to sounds and haptics, and up top you want to turn on silent mode. That is off by default, but you want to turn this on so that your watch does not make noises when you get a phone call or text message. Because your watch already has haptic feedback, so you'll feel the vibration on your wrist. You don't really need a sound to go with that. So I would recommend turning on silent mode. That is personal preference, but I personally think that you should have that turned on. Now I'm going to pair this with something else because you also want to customize your haptics. So go into haptics right underneath of that, and this is where you can choose between having the haptics on off, default, or prominent. I would highly recommend having your haptics set to either default or prominent. I like prominent because you could just feel that vibration a little bit better. And if you go down to here, we do also have the crown haptics. So what this means is that when you scroll through with the digital crown, you will feel the haptic feedback when you scroll. And it just feels so much more, I don't know, it feels so much more responsive, and it just feels nice when you have haptic feedback on the digital crown scrolls. And then of course we do have our system haptics down there, which is enabled by default. Now, if you don't agree with me that silent mode is the best, you might want to change your ringtones and your notification tones as well. So if you like sounds coming from your Apple Watch, that's fine. You can go ahead and change your tones in here. So you might want to change these from something different than the default. Now, if you do decide to keep silent mode off, or even if you don't, you also need to change another setting. So if we go back to our main settings page and then go down to gestures, you want to make sure that cover to mute is turned on. And what this means is that if you get an alert or if you hear any type of sound coming from your Apple Watch, you can mute it with a simple covering like that with your palm. Okay, so now let's talk notifications, because you really need to clean up your notifications that you actually receive on your Apple Watch. So go into your settings, go to notifications, and first off, you might want to turn on tap to show full notifications. So if you like reading notifications a lot from your Apple Watch and you want to see the full thing without going to your phone, you can turn that on. And then right here we have show notifications on wrist down. So for example, if you're walking and your wrist is down as it implies, you might not want to have notifications turned on at all until you raise your wrist. And if you like the sound of that, you might want to turn off show notifications on wrist down completely. I personally do not like seeing notifications unless I raise my wrist up. So I'm going to keep that off. And then down here we have our individual application notification settings. So if we go into, let's just say activity, for example, we have all of our notifications right here that you would like to receive. Here's a big one, stand reminders. If you're not a fan of the stand reminders where it reminds you to stand after sitting for 50 minutes, you can turn that off, along with the daily coaching and all the other activity notifications. And then down here we have mirror iPhone alerts. So you can turn on or off any application that you want to mirror your iPhone's notification settings from. Okay, so there's two different ways to view your applications on your Apple Watch. So we have this standard grid view. So this is what the default is. But if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, we also have a list view. So if you can't find an application and you want to look alphabetically, you can do this as well. Now also, if you go into your watch application on your iPhone and go down to app view, from here, if you change this to the grid view, you'll notice that we have an option for arrangement. If you go to that, this will allow you to arrange your applications however you please. So if you listen to music a lot, you can move this all the way up to the top so it's always there. However, you might notice that the top is not always the most accessible. You can see that the middle one right there, the timer in this case, is the one that's always front and center. So you might want to take that into account. So if you always take your heart rate, you might want to move this in that spot so that now that's always there and you can easily find it. So just move your applications around to wherever you please. This is an important one because a lot of people just really lose their applications on their grid view on their home screen here. And by the way, I just set up my Apple Watch Series 10 and you can see that I have a lot of applications on here that I simply just do not need. Like Charles Schwab, why do I need that on my Apple Watch? You know, DJI, why do I need that on my Apple Watch? I don't. So let's remove those. So we're going to go down here to the bottom until we find installed on Apple Watch, and you want to remove any application that you do not want on your Apple Watch and it will uninstall it. So All Trails I'll keep on there, but something like Webull, I can uninstall that. I don't need that. So you want to remove any application that you don't need on your Apple Watch, and to prevent this from happening from future applications that you install, you need to go into your settings and go to General and turn off automatic app install, because with this turned on, which it's on by default, that will just automatically install any application that you install on your iPhone onto your Apple Watch, as long as they have an application for Apple Watch. And that can be very annoying and just clutter up your Apple Watch because you might not want an Apple Watch app for every single iPhone app that you download. And that also eats into storage as well. Like, yes, we have 64 gigabytes of storage, but you want to keep as much free as possible, and allowing random applications that you never use is not a great way to handle storage on your Apple Watch. So the next thing you need to do is understand how to use the new depth gauge and the water temperature sensor. So the Apple Watch Series 10 now has a depth gauge, and it can be submerged in up to 20 feet of water. And also there's a water temperature sensor. So if you want to check the temperature in a pool or a water park, you can now wear your Apple Watch there and it will tell you the temperature of that water. Now, as far as the depth gauge goes, we do have a depth application right here on our home screen. And if you go into that, you can see it says to record depth, you need to submerge the Apple Watch, but you want to make sure that your settings are right for this feature as well. So go back to your iPhone and go into General. And from here, you want to go to Auto Launch. And this is where you have your settings for the depth application. So it shows, first off, when submerged, what do you want to happen? So do you want it to show the depth application? Do you want it to be off? Or do you want it to remain on the watch face? I think you should keep this at the default so it opens up the depth application right once you go underwater. Now also, there's a threshold when submerged. So I think that most people need to change this to at 3 feet. The next thing you need to do is wear your watch to sleep and also understand the vitals application. So first off, if you ever had trouble in the past with wearing an Apple Watch to bed because it was too thick, it was too heavy, it was too annoying on your wrist, just try it out again with the Apple Watch Series 10. This is the lightest and thinnest Apple Watch ever, so just give it another try because the information that you get from your sleep stages can be invaluable for understanding, your body and your sleep schedule and your sleeping patterns. Like right here, for example, I knew when I woke up that I was going to feel good because I got an hour and 30 minutes of deep sleep, which is key for me personally to get a lot done the next day. So I knew right when I got out of bed today that things were going to be good because I got my sleep. And I tracked that with my Apple Watch Series 10. So go on to your iPhone's watch application and then go down to the sleep section. And then you want to make sure that track sleep with Apple Watch is turned on. And also you want to make sure that charging reminders is turned on. That way you'll get a notification if it detects that your bedtime is coming up and you don't have enough battery to get through the night, or if it's going to be close, you can get a reminder to charge up your Apple Watch. Which, fun fact, with the Apple Watch, you can get up to 8 hours of sleep tracking with just 8 minutes of charge. So the Apple Watch Series 10 is the fastest charging Apple Watch ever as well. So you'll be able to charge it up really fast right before you go to bed. I think everybody has 8 minutes to spare if you want to wear this to bed and have enough charge through the night. You also want to go into the health application and go to browse and then go down to sleep. And this is where you can see a lot of other information about your sleep. So you can see it over the past week, month, 6 months. You can see I always wear an Apple Watch to bed because it gives me great information about, my heart rate, my respiratory rate, all of that. And of course, it shows me how good I'm sleeping in terms of the types of sleep that I'm getting. So REM sleep, core sleep, and deep sleep. And then we have the vitals application. So it's this application right here. If you tap on that, you will see your different vitals. So again, you could also track this inside of the health application. It has its own section called vitals, and you can go into your vitals right here to see your charts. And the reason I'm pairing this with sleep is because you do need to sleep with your Apple Watch for 7 days before your Apple Watch and the vitals application can determine what your, basic typical range is for your body. So it's going to measure things like your heart rate, your respiratory rate, your blood oxygen, your body temperature, and of course, the big one is your sleep duration. So it's going to take and combine all those metrics, and that's how it's going to establish your typical range in the vitals application. And if you fall outside of that range, you will see that we have outliers. So this can tell you what the outlier was. So for this day, it was my heart rate. So my heart rate may have been high or low in that day, and I can see more information about that. And in the Apple Watch application, it's a little bit better laid out. So I like it in here a lot better than in the health application. You get more details, and you can kind of see, what the previous night's vitals were. So it shows that last night was a typical night, which is good. You want that to show as typical. And then it shows your heart rate. So that was it was within my typical range at 60 BPM. My respiratory rate shows right there. And then also the wrist temperature. So it shows I need 4 more sleep sessions before it can tell me what my wrist temperature is compared to my average. It hasn't determined an average yet because again, it does need 7 nights of sleeping with it. And this application is awesome because it's detected when I've been sick before I even feel sick. And that's happened to multiple other people as well. So this can really tell you a lot about your body. And I'd highly recommend sleeping with your Apple Watch, not just for the sleep tracking itself, but also to get access to the vitals application. And if you maybe got a lot of sleep one night, or maybe you had a really bad outlier that you were worried about and you want to take a screenshot of it on your Apple Watch, you can actually do that, but it's disabled by default. So go into your iPhone's watch application and go into the settings, go to general, and then scroll down and you will see that we have enable screenshots. So you want to make sure to turn that on. And the way to take screenshots on your Apple Watch is we just press on the digital crown and the side button at the same time. So both of these, and boom, it takes a screenshot, and now it will send that directly to my iPhone's camera roll. And there it is, it shows up instantly. Okay, so here's something else that you need to do pretty much right away. I should have had this earlier in the list, but you want to customize your smart stack and your widgets. So now in watchOS 11, we do have live activity. So sometimes you'll see cards in the smart stack right here, which smart stack, by the way, is just when you scroll up on your digital crown, it shows you all these little widgets right here. You could also access this by swiping up from your watch face, and you'll get access to the date, you'll get access to the time, and of course all your different widgets right here. So again, you will have live activities that show right there sometimes, and also some widgets will change based on the time, location, and relevance, but you can customize what widgets show up below that. So to do that, just tap and hold on any of these widgets, and you can see that we now get this prompt to add widgets or pin them. So just tap on the plus, and you have all these different options that you can choose from, all these different widgets that you can add. So if I wanted to add Fantastic, for example, I can add that as my calendar, and you can see just different variations of that widget. So we'll add this one right here, and now it is up at the top of my widgets. It is pinned, and then you also have different suggestions down here, maybe based on the applications that you use most frequently. So we'll add activity there as well. And now if we go out, you'll notice that it shows up right there. And you also have other options when you swipe over as well. So you can mute notifications from that specific application, and you could also press on the X right here to clear it. So you can clear that widget, and now it will not show up on your smart stack anymore. So the next thing you need to change is probably the very first setting I change on every single Apple Watch that I buy. So go into your settings, go down to display and brightness, and from here you want to scroll down until you see wake duration. You want to select that and choose wake for 70 seconds. So by default, it's set to 15 seconds, which means that your Apple Watch will only stay on a certain screen for 15 seconds before it goes back to the watch face. That annoys me every single time, so I like being able to have this set to wake for 70 seconds. That way I have time to actually, consume whatever is on my screen without it going back to the watch face. And we'll go back to our iPhone for the other display settings that you need to change because it's the same in here. I just like showing the watch and the iPhone at the same time. You can pretty much configure all the same settings on your iPhone anyway. So you do also have the always on display here. So if you don't like this for some reason, you can turn it off, and you could also customize what happens on wrist down. So if you don't like certain things showing when your wrist is down, like when you're walking, you can change that right here. So you can disable certain complication data. So this can be great for, if you don't want somebody seeing some of your data, you can turn that off so that it doesn't show up until you actually raise your wrist. So that can be great for notifications especially. And then you have your text size, which I actually like increasing this. I'm going to increase that right now just because sometimes even with a 46mm watch, it is sometimes a little bit hard to read messages when I'm trying to respond. So I like increasing the text size there. You could also change the bold text, turn that on or off, and you also have your wake right here. So if you want to wake on your wrist raise, you can turn that on, and also wake on crown rotation. So what that means is that your watch will wake when you start dialing the crown like so. So you can turn that off if you would like to, but it's on by default. Okay, so on your Apple Watch by default, if you go into an application and you stay there for 2 minutes, after that 2-minute marker, it will just go back to your clock here. It'll go back to your watch face. However, you might not like that. You might like it staying open longer than that. So let's change that. And by the way, this is different from the wake duration that we just talked about. So go into your settings and go to general and then scroll down until you see return to clock. Go into this, and this is where you have your settings. So we have always after 2 minutes, which is the default, or after 1 hour. Now I know what you're thinking, 1 hour, that's going to drain all my battery. But the thing is, you don't have to set this to be for every application. That's where this section comes in handy, where we can customize this on a per app basis. So for example, for me on all trails, I need my Apple Watch application to stay open for more than 2 minutes. I've actually done this before in the past. So what you want to do is go to return to clock and set this to custom, and now you can have this specific application only stay open for 1 hour before returning to the watch face. And I would recommend setting this up if you have any application like Strava, All Trails, anything where you would potentially need to be in that application for more than 2 minutes before it returns back to the clock. Now here's a good tip for the Apple Watch Series 10. You want to start using Siri for everything, but don't say the S word. All you have to do is pull your watch up to your mouth and speak. Set a timer for 10 minutes. As you can see there, I did not say the S word. All I did was raise my wrist up to my mouth and start speaking. I didn't have to say the S word when I did that. I just said what I wanted and it did what I wanted, which was set a timer for 10 minutes. Now, you want to make sure this is enabled, so go into your settings, go into Siri, and then right here we have raise to speak. Make sure that's turned on. And if you keep scrolling down, we also have something else I want to touch on here, and that is Siri responses. So if you go into here, you can see that you can change these spoken responses to either be always on, control with silent mode, or be headphones only. And if you want to adjust the volume for Siri, you can scroll down to the bottom and you can change the voice volume for the speaker when it comes to Siri's spoken responses. The next thing you need to do is understand how to switch between applications quickly. So if I were in, let's just say we were in the sleep application and we wanted to go into podcast and then right back into sleep. Instead of going back to the home screen and then going back into sleep, that's the slow way. All you need to do is double click on the digital crown. So double press it real quick and you can see it will wait for a second and go to the app switcher and then go back to the application. So there you go. Double press every time will allow you to go back to the previous application quickly. And by the way, you'll notice that there's a little waiting period there. That's because you also have the option to go into the app switcher if you would like to as well and view all of your open applications. The next thing you want to do is something that's very often overlooked by Apple Watch users, and that is to link your watch faces to your focus modes. So watch what happens when I change one of my focus modes on my iPhone. So for example, if I go into personal, you'll see that the watch face will change to Snoopy. If I go to groceries, you'll notice that the watch face once again will change to reflections in this instance. Or if I go down to recording a video, it will go back to the default watch face, but that's because I set it up to do that. Now to do this, you need to go into your iPhone's settings application and then go down until you see focus, go into here and then choose the focus mode that you want to configure. So for me, I'll go into recording a video. And then if you go down, you'll see right here we have customize screens. So you can customize your iPhone's home screen screen and lock screen, but you could also customize your watch face. So for example, if I'm recording a video, I probably want it to be something very minimal and not distracting. So none of these really match that, so let's make a new one. There we go. Numerals duo is very simple, and I like that because it's not going to be distracting when I'm recording a video. So now every time I go into that focus mode, it will change to that specific watch face. Okay, so here's a good one. With iOS 18 and watchOS 11, your Apple Watch Series 10 can now store offline maps. So basically, you don't even need an iPhone at all anymore, especially if you have a cellular Apple Watch Series 10. So to do that, you'll see this little download button when you go to anywhere on your map. Just go to that, and this will allow you to set a radius for what you want to download, like how much of that area do you want to download to your device. So you can do that for certain areas on the map, certain cities, or you can go down to hikes and download specific hiking trails. So if you want to download that, just tap on download, and you can see it will pop up, and we'll go ahead and download that. And once that starts downloading, or once it's already downloaded, you can just tap right here and you'll see an option for sync with Apple Watch. You want to make sure that's turned on so you can have your offline maps saved directly to your Apple Watch. And you can also access this by tapping on your profile picture to the right of the search bar in Maps, and then go to offline maps, and you'll see all of them right here along with that same sync with Apple Watch setting. And then the final thing you want to do on your Apple Watch Series 10 is to set up your important health settings. So go into your watch application and go down to emergency SOS, and then in here you want to make sure that call after severe crash and fall detection are turned on. So if you have crash detection on, it will automatically call emergency services if it detects that you are in a crash. So that can be potentially life-saving, as can this one, fall detection. So by default, this is only on during workouts, but if you want to change that to always be on, you can change that right here. And keep in mind, anytime any of these gets triggered, so a severe crash, fall detection, or if you dial 911 using the side button, holding the side button, every time you do that, not only will emergency services get contact, but also your emergency contacts will be contacted as well. And you can see I have 2 emergency contacts set up, my dad and my mom. Now, if you don't have those set up, this is the time to set those up. You don't want to have to think about it, but you need this in there. It could be, again, potentially life-saving. So go to Edit Contacts and Health, and from this screen, you want to add your emergency contact. So those are some of the first things that you need to do on your Apple Watch Series 10. So I hope you found this video useful. If you did, I would appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. Also, make sure to subscribe because I do have more Apple Watch content coming very soon. But in the meantime, you might enjoy this video right here where I show all the new features in watchOS 11. So check that out if you have not done so already. I did also have a video on my Apple Watch Series 10 unboxing right there. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.